Right, so this is our 5 kilowatt photovoltaic array. So this produces, you know, as Alan said, 40% of the energy needs in the winter months. It's actually made by a company, Evergreen, that has a very clean energy processing in the way that it actually makes the silicone wafers. So not only is it, you know, producing clean energy, but the way in which it's made is actually very eco-friendly, as they say. So you see we've broken up into 2 sets of panels. And actually behind here we have 2 additional solar panels, but these are for solar thermal, so to heat all of the domestic hot water. So it heats the hot water out of the taps, and then also we have a radiant heating system. So that's all sourced by the sun's heat.
And those 2 panels are enough for the...
That's part of the learning
building?
process. Right now we're trying to gather all the data. Eventually we're going to have not only a panel that helps us get the readings on how much electricity we're producing, but we're also going to see if this is getting, you know, up to temperature and maintaining as much as we need and use in the house.
We're in agreement of disturbing as little of the site as possible, which is part of sustainability, right? You know, have as narrow an envelope as possible, store materials there, move materials carefully, and don't go outside the bounds of the snow fence. And so when we laid this out, given where Concom wanted us to stay, we couldn't extend this array long enough to make it one. And we couldn't extend it that way because of the wastewater. And so we just broke it up. But it could be one long array of 28 panels.
What about the maintenance on that? How much do you need to do?
There's very little. Within the first 6 months, you're supposed to lubricate it once, and then thereafter every 2 years.
And how long is its lifespan?
You know, I don't think that they've really said that there is a particular lifespan. It's
And the generator is right underneath the pin? That's where it's generated?
Yep.
Everything else is just what has to hold it up from
Yeah,
falling.
you need to get a certain height depending on your site location.
Sure.
But the bigger thing I was worried about was seagulls dropping shells, and so they're actually rated. This is a Corning tempered glass product that the installer and the engineer said you can drop a hammer from 10 feet, it won't break. So, and it's interesting, we don't see a lot of shells at the base. I would think this would be a perfect place for them. So funny, I want to say it quietly in case the birds hear us. Say, you know, he's right, let's drop the shells on it. That hasn't been an issue, and in terms of keeping the panels clean, you want to keep them clean. And I'm working on convincing my 6-year-old Henry and my 4-year-old Charlie that if they're really, really good, I'm going to let them clean the solar panels.
Do you just clean them with Windex or something? Or
Just water.
Just water?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
You know, this would emulate what we'd like to do with the FAA property. Have the Matticat wastewater treatment plant, solar arrays, and wind turbines all co-located on that 100 acres there. So you've built a mini demonstration center for future FAA property.
Thank you, Alan.
And you're welcome. Well, there's, you know, as I said, we are still fine-tuning all the products.
Yeah.
And it is, you know, you'd like to say it's pretty simple, you know, wind and solar, and the technology must be advanced enough. But they're all so new that getting them to interface through different manufacturers is not a layup. And so you're right, we're a laboratory, Whitey, and to the extent the town ever does it, you got to really pick the brain of the team that put this together, because we're happy to tell you everything we did right and everything we did wrong. Because that's the goal, is to figure it out so we can export it. And part of the social aspect of sustainability is education. So as we learn, we want to report out. That's why we're happy to have the Energy Committee and Habitat, and we had the City of Cambridge. We've had Sustainable Nantucket, we had Bill McDonough,
Tons of interest, yeah.
I mean, we've had a lot of interesting people.
Yeah.
If the wind blows 60% of the time, why not have 40% more batteries so that you offset when the wind isn't going? Is it possible to do that or no?
Well, it's all about sizing the system and sizing the components, right? And including batteries and wind and solar. And so we basically said, you don't want to go all wind or all solar, right? Because if there's no wind or no sun, you're dead.
Unless you store it though, right? Or no, the batteries can't store it.
But you could have days, you know, you would need a massive battery bank.
Yes.
And again, if you were relying totally on sun, and there was no sun for a week, which we can have, or you can have a gray day, it's still producing sun, but it's not maximum, then you're really stuck, and you're drawing. Don't forget, you're not just storing, you're using. So there's no recovery if there's no sun. So the engineer basically said, let's split it. Let's have 5 kW of solar, 5 kW of wind. So if there's no sun, like the last few days where it was blowing 40, this thing was cranking.
I bet.
And this was probably only producing 20% of its capacity. And then the question is, how many batteries do you want? Well, we have 30 batteries. Now, we could have 100 batteries, but there's cost to that. So the question is, how do we store enough so that if there's no wind and no solar, we can exist for several days before the wind and the sun come back? And so that's the balance. And you know, part of sustainability is economic sustainability. So sure, you could spend $1 million on batteries and probably be fine, but you know, that's not a layup either, because the complexity of drawing from the battery towers and how you want to fill them up and draw them down to make sure the battery has a longer life.
Right.
You actually don't want them to only draw down 10%.
Right.
And so, I mean, I think the big, it seems to me, and Jennifer may have a different view, the real technology that can be developed is battery. I mean, that's,
Right.
you know,
That's
we
what I've
need
heard.
longer life, and we need better storage, and we need them smaller and lighter and cheaper.